Are we going? We are going.
Okay. So, you've all known who your theorist is now. Is there anybody that's really traumatized by who they chose, or is completely concerned about what they're going to do? So, your job is to start to do some research. So, this is the time that I give you to go downstairs. You can look online. You can pull things off of the internet. Please don't use Wikipedia. It's probably not a valid source of information. Some of it's true, and some of it is okay, but then it's really hard to pick out what is and what isn't. Sometimes Wikipedia is good for things like a diagram or a picture of the theory.
Have you ever heard of Google Scholar?
No.
Linda X was telling us about it in our STSC class.
Okay.
Google Scholar, all the information given there is true.
Perfect. Then that would be a good one to go on to. So what I always say to students is kind of get all sorts of stuff from different sources, and then begin to pick and choose what's useful and what's not. Because in the end, your job is to kind of make this person and this person's ideas make sense to us, so that we can remember what is the difference between Erikson and Freud and Skinner and Bandura and Vygotsky or Piaget, so that in our heads we can, without having to memorize and to look it up, you're able to, I always say, what is the key idea? What is the main idea of this person's theory? So the bibliography, I always find that it's fascinating who they were, what year they were born, when they died, what kind of family they had, where did they go to school, what did they study? Because it's really interesting. Really interesting, some of these theorists. They had a very, very interesting background. And that helps to make us remember this person, is kind of the obscure, weird stuff that you think, wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then you remember that person because of that. If they have stages, to give kind of a little diagram or a little overview of the stages, only focus, who has Erikson? Okay, really don't worry about after, you go from 0 to 12, and then you make sure we know that there's 8 stages, but really pay attention to the early childhood years.
Okay, so that's where my focus is.
Yeah. You know what somebody did that was really interesting? I was going to share this because it's an interesting one. Is someone did, they had a whole bunch of different, they went through a bunch of magazines and just tore out a whole bunch of pictures of people and things and words, and then they put it out and they said, okay, you're going to do trust versus mistrust. You create a poster. You're going to do autonomy versus shame. So pick out a bunch of pictures and make a poster, sort of what kind of faces or feelings or words that you could use. So during the presentation, all the students were involved in it so that they would remember it better because they were doing it. That was a really clever idea. And so at the end, she said, okay, so let's put on the stages that people had made these collages. So it was kind of unique and interesting. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So once again, you can do all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be just a presentation of words. You can use a YouTube. You can make yourself a YouTube. You can do whatever you want to make it make sense. If you're doing Piaget, you might want us to do some of the experiments of what he learned about what children do and don't do. Because you've got Piglet, right? You might want to share some of either their very famous studies or some of the experiments or something that was interesting to help us make sense of this person. And then I was at the the end, I always say to the students, so what makes this theory strong or interesting? And what were some of the areas that we're now questioning? And that's what your study sheet should look like. It shouldn't be more than a page and a half tops.
Oh, Deb, you're
I know.
asking for a lot by asking for a little.
So once again, this can be point form. This doesn't have to be lovely and elegant and, you know, it can be very simply point form. It's a study sheet. So when you're studying for the, because after we do all these theorists, there's going to be a quiz on all of these theorists. So you want to think about what are the most important things for me to know.
If I had to sell you, if I go out skiing,
So I've had students that actually did a play, you know, kind of did a little skit. So people have, one of my favorites was also, it was just after Eric Erickson had passed away in 1992. And I was teaching child development then, and she did a eulogy. It was really great. I kept it. She did a really nice job. So she came dressed like Eric Erickson. She had a suit and said, you know, here I am, you know, and then she proceeded to do her own eulogy. Yeah. Anyway, it was interesting. So you could, and once again, some person did a Jeopardy game with all of the key ideas, and did a little kind of Jeopardy game up on the board with this tape and everything. That was simple. Some people had did crosswords and word searches. And
Okay.
there's all sorts of things that you can do. That how you can present this. So it doesn't just have to be this kind of up here talking about it.
Cool.
The more that we involve everybody, the more you remember. I can pretty much guarantee that. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to give you at least a half an hour in class every day to go to the library, bring things. If you want to leave books here, like if you've got a bunch of stuff that you've gathered and you want to leave them somewhere, I'm happy to leave them in Mona Carey's office.
Okay.
And then you can just go and get a key and open it when you want them. There's a bookshelf there.
Okay.
Because there isn't any other place to leave them in the college that I know of. Do you have lockers?
I do, but they're quite small.
Right. So if you've got, so once again, you can go downstairs, you can use your computers, you can bring books in here, you can ask them for help. I have quite a few books that I'm happy to share. Eric Erickson wrote a book, you know, he wrote his own book. It's interesting to read a bit of it, just to get
So
a.
do you want like information from more than one place? Because I thought, okay.
Yeah.
So you want information from books.
Yeah.
So there are books
Oh,
on
tons.
each of these theorists
Tons.
down in our library?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And just go look on there, excuse me. I have a friend over right now in the cookies and he drank too much wine last night and I started to lean.
Oh,
Well, we would have never guessed.
Never guessed that. Well, I shouldn't say
Very
this
well.
on tape, should I?
You can erase that part.
I should take that back, yeah. But, so, I'm gonna give you this time because I think it's important to begin to, so keep track. So if you're gonna go down to the library, keep
Log it.
all your notes and have a little log of what you're doing. You're welcome to use this computer, but you can't print off of it. You can do some searching, but you're better off to use the library and to become friends with the librarian down there.
I like the books.
She's just the best.
I wish there
She's
was
great.
any online
Yeah.
research.
So, is that, you're okay with all that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can go downstairs and you can do anything. If you need any help, I'm just gonna be in my office. If you wanna leave stuff there, I'll be there. And you can all keep track of time yourself, and you know when you're done, you can just, you don't have to come back and tell me goodbye. And I'm gonna go.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure, teacher?
I'm okay.
I need to
I'm
have
gonna go and I couldn't find the little quiz for the chapter 2, so I'm either gonna go and make a new one. Or I'm gonna look a little harder first, and then take a new one. And I'll bring it down, I'll bring it to you in the library.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay? Okay.
Cool. Great.
So far so good, right? We're doing okay?
The internet is working again.
Oh, yes.
Because it wasn't.
Yes.